but I felt the presence of this being next to me. I only had the sense that it was a being that I knew quite well. And the being was communicating to me, I'm going to say telepathically.
Yeah.
My name is David Beckman, and my near-death study or my near-death experience happened actually in 1988, July 17th, 1988. I was on a whitewater rafting trip with 5 or 6 other friends. And I realized within moments that I was in a lot bigger trouble than I'd anticipated because the current was so strong that it pulled me down and under. And then it would shoot me over the rocks in the so-called stair, and then over these little waterfalls, and then it would roll me around at the bottom of these little waterfalls. Uh, River runners call this being maytagged, like the washing machine. So you're being spun around down in this dark eddy until the current finally kicks you out. And as you're being spun around, you can be, you're being shoved into rocks, and it's all happening very fast, and it's very powerful, and there's very little you can do to help yourself. So I realized after I went down a couple of these, and I was bashed into rocks, that I was probably in trouble. And uh, when the current tossed me out of these vertical eddies, I would start to see light up ahead of me and bubbles and hear the roar of the water because down below it was quite silent. I couldn't, I tried to swim to the surface and I couldn't move my arms. So I tried kicking my way out to the surface and I couldn't move my legs. I was just totally exhausted and spent and bashed up. So I knew at that point that I probably wasn't going to make it. And I thought, well, the last thing this river is going to take from me is my last breath, and I'm not giving it to it while I'm conscious. And then in a few moments, waiting to die, essentially, I just felt myself in a moment, sort of a whooshing, and I was somewhere else. And all of a sudden, I was in a place where there was no pain, there was no violence. In fact, I was not aware that I was in my body, but it was me. And I said to myself, what the hell just happened to me? And as I said that, there was, I would say, appeared. At this point, it's very difficult to describe correctly what happens. I don't think we have the words in our vernacular to be accurate about it. Time and space is different. Uh, Obviously, whoever or whatever we are at that point are different. But I felt the presence of this being next to me. I only had the sense that it was a being that I knew quite well. And the being was communicating to me, I'm going to say telepathically, that I was okay and that everything was going to be okay. And so uh, I remember sort of following this being a little bit, and there was just it felt like a few moments had transpired, and suddenly I saw my entire life began to play out in front of me, and I saw it from 3 perspectives simultaneously. And I guess you could say the first was the way I viewed it, the way I had viewed it as I had lived it. The second point of view was sort of the this omniscient point of view where I was experiencing it as though I were sort of floating above it and watching it. And the third point of view was from the perspective of everyone with whom I had ever interacted. So my first memory of that review was when I was 4 years old. I had a friend. His name was John Arthur. We lived on the East Coast, and there was a very distinctive East Coast, what would I call it, accent, dialect. And So he called himself John Arthur. I would have called him John Arthur. But at any rate, uh, John Arthur had apparently hit my younger brother. He's a year younger than I was, so he was only about 3 years old. And he came in crying, and I heard what had happened when he told me about it. So I went outside to go out and confront John Arthur. And as I did, I went out the front door, saw him in his yard next door. He waved and smiled and started running over to me. And I decided to duck around the corner of the house. And as I did that, I saw a stick about maybe 2 feet long, maybe about 3/4 of an inch or an inch around. I don't know what you call that in centimeters, 3 centimeters. And uh, I picked up the stick, and as he came around the corner, I whacked him over the head with it. And he was very surprised, and he grabbed his head and started screaming. And I felt the blow. I felt how he felt. And that was how we proceeded. So every time I had interacted with someone and I had caused them joy or pain, I felt what I had done. And there were obviously experiences that I was not proud of at all. In fact, I was quite ashamed. And as I turned my attention to this being who I felt was beside me, I received no judgment whatsoever. It was as though I was washed over by a sea of this unconditional love, and that whatever judgment that would take place would be from myself, but from the perspective of the being that I was, and not from what I'll call an earthly perspective. And so it was more or less not so much right and wrong, but cause and effect. What did I learn from this? What can I take with me? That sort of thing. And as I began to ask questions about all of this, the answers would flow into me. And the more questions and the more questions I had and the more answers that flowed into me, the more questions I had, because it was like being connected really to the universe's best internet. There was an instantaneous and full and satisfactory answer to everything I ever had a question about. So, and it was as though I sort of had a new toy. It was amazing. And as I had all of my questions answered, I was then told, you can stay or you can go. Your life isn't complete, but it's your choice. So, if you decide to stay here, there are agreements, or maybe we can call them contracts, with the other, I'm going to say, other souls that I would interact with in my life in this lifetime. And I would have to rearrange with these people a way to interact with them in some other lifetime if I didn't go back and complete this one now. And I remember thinking, uh, I don't want to have to come back and do it again. Uh, so I will go back. And I felt regretful about it because it was a place where okay, I'm going to say that I think on earth we feel like whatever sort of divinity there is, it's somewhere else, whether it's in heaven or some other dimension or whatever. But from this experience, it felt as though I were dwelling within the consciousness of God, and that we all did. We all do. That that it's like we're all sort of bobbing around this ocean that is God, and this God is nothing but complete, unbelievable love, no judgment. I had the sense that this gigantic, all-encompassing love was the power that created everything. So anyway, I didn't want to leave this, but I decided that I should the most expedient way of taking care of things was to go back. And so I made the decision to go back. And in the next moment, I found myself floating just under the surface down at the bottom of this staircase. And Breck in the kayak, I sort of see my friends as though I was sort of hovering above them, and they all were ashen gray looking for me. And Breck found me. He saw my orange life vest come down through the channel, and he grabbed it and he pulled me up and he started yelling at me to breathe and to grab a hold of this rope loop that was on the end of his kayak, and he would tow me out. What happened within the next couple of weeks was I was trying to process all of what had just happened to me. And trust me, I was not at all certain um, what had. I just knew that I'd had this very life-changing experience. What I had been doing, I had trained as a journalist, trained as a reporter, but jobs were increasingly difficult to get, and I got laid off from this company that I had been working for. It was a company called UPI, United Press International, but I got a job as an IBM sales rep selling electronic typewriters and word processing equipment. So I had been doing that for about a year. Nice lifestyle, but I wasn't happy. And what I had decided I was going to do was I was going to go find a reporting job, no matter how humble, and start over again. So I turned in my resignation. And the day after I did that, I received a letter from a friend over across the other part of the state. And it was, they were telling me about a job as a reporter that had opened up over in their area. And they were wondering if I was interested. So, of course, I went and interviewed for it. And when I interviewed for it, I knew it was mine and I got it. I would say we're all going to die. These bodies eventually will deteriorate to the point where it can't sustain life anymore. But they're not, this body is not me. So grateful that I have it, but it's not me. Who I am is me. and I knew that when I was outside of my body. And that's sort of, at least it's a piece of who we are. Our personality, our energy survives. And I would say when that time comes, uh, it's so much better than everyone has been taught. So much better. So I don't necessarily want to die, but when my time comes, I'm ready. But I want to enjoy this lifetime as much as possible, knowing that it's just part of the journey. And I'm not sure that fear of death or anything else really serves us. We, if we can find it within ourselves to lean into whatever happens to us. And if I get a cancer diagnosis, you might have to ask me about it again, but something like that. But I think that's how we sort of have to approach life, is that we're not here forever. So enjoy your family, enjoy life, enjoy breathing air and the sun and the things that we have. Well, I believe that we chose before we came here to experience certain things. And that might sound like a very glib and unsatisfactory answer to a lot of people, but it's all about the choices that we made before and the choices that we make here now. And so, things will happen to us um, that we don't understand here. we don't have the perspective here that we have on the other side, if that makes sense. So I might have chosen, for example, I've been married 3 times. Why would I have chosen that? Why would I want to go through that? But apparently, I wanted I wanted to have those experiences. Um, I love my life here. I love my fortune, my good fortune. I'm healthy. I have lived a good life. I live a very good life. I'm a very happy man. Uh, and I hope that it continues, but I know that whatever happens going forward, it's part of the experience that I at some point chose, either over there before I came here, or somehow um, chose that here now. I'm very close to nature and to nature's rhythms, and that makes me happy. And the wild animals, are prevalent here, and it makes me happy that they're around me and they're not afraid of me, and we sort of live in this coexistence. And I'm getting a signal from my oh yes from my girlfriend. I also enjoy working out. I believe that I'm 68, so at this point your body has you have to keep this body in shape. I eat well, I exercise. I suppose every morning I go out and I meditate and sort of pray uh, based on a Native American prayer. And so I walk out and I'm barefoot so I can feel the ground underneath me and try to connect with the earth and the sky and the air and appreciate it and thank what we all call, I guess, the God force or God or the creator. I try to express my gratitude for what I have. We humans have our good and bad traits. And those of us who've been through this experience know what's going to happen when this particular lifetime ends. And by the way, I had the sense that this was just one of many of my lifetimes. Uh, that I wanted to try to come through this as as well as I could, and that meant try to be as loving and forgiving and uh, not have a particular need uh, to engage in a tit for tat relationship, uh, have to win some sort of conflict, that sort of thing. So I think that's one of the biggest changes. And I also sort of listen to my intuition much more because I would say that's probably one thing I learned in one of my questions is that we all have this intuition. I'm pointing to my heart center, and we should all trust it. And it should be the first and the foremost um, guide for us, no matter what other people uh, may think or may try to persuade us. To your audience, I would say much love to each and every one of you, and peace, and live a good life. Love your family. Love yourself.